Good afternoon, everyone. We are now live on YouTube. Welcome to the Tuesday Table Talk, hosted by PATH, Patient Advocates Transforming Healthcare. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to jump into a very important topic that I know has been top of mind for many. And I have My apologies. We were having some technical difficulties, so we're going to go ahead and start again. Welcome again, everyone, to Tuesday Table Talk, hosted by PATH, Patient Advocates Transforming Healthcare. I'm really excited to have my guest today. We are going to jump into the topic of the importance of community partnerships and family engagement. My name is Hala Dura. I am the founder of Patient Advocates Transforming Healthcare, PATH. I'm also a patient family engagement consultant. PATH represents a diverse coalition of patient, family, caregiver, and community engagement leaders, really hoping to reimagine and transform healthcare. We are committed to building equal and equitable partnerships and systems, engagement and empowerment of all voices, and sharing our collective voice as leaders in this work to really transform healthcare. I'm really excited and happy to be joined by my friend and colleague, Tamala Milan Alexander, or Tammy as I like to call her. She is a maternal and child health outreach worker and coordinator of Westside Healthy Start Community Action Net at the Access Community Health Network in Chicago. She's also a well-known speaker and leader in this work, as well as serves as member of the executive committee of the Family Partnerships Network at the American Academy of Pediatrics. So I'm very honored that Tammy will be joining me today for this really important conversation. We know that community-based organizations are our lifelines to connecting communities with all facets of our local society, including healthcare. And these partnerships, especially now in the events of the pandemic and our broad societal discussion around police brutality, racial injustice, and structural racism. And now more than ever, making these partnerships, these lasting partnerships, and committing to them is of the utmost importance. And I do believe that healthcare systems have a great opportunity to really break down those layers of structural racism and get to those discussions around health equity and bringing disparities, taking those disparities and really taking a hard look of how we are actually supporting them and not breaking them down. And I think community-based organizations and community partnerships is an essential way of doing this. And in order to do this work, we know that community-based organizations need the support. So as funders, as community leaders, as political leaders, as health systems, we really have to look at ways to partner with community-based organizations and not just be committed to that work, but also understand it requires various levels of support, which obviously would include funding, education, training, and really committing to a long-term solution versus short-term strategies. So in that setting, I think we really can get to a better place in healthcare and transform healthcare, but it will take time, commitment, and support to get there. So I'm really excited to have Tammy on with us, who is an engaged community leader, has been driven by this work, by her own experiences personally and professionally, and who really has risen to the occasion of saying that these partnerships matter, and these are the ways we can really start to partner together. And so, Tammy, I just thought maybe you could just give us a little background about your work at Access and how you came to this work and some of the strategies that you hope to continue to support, especially in light of the current state of affairs we're in right now as a society.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Hala. As you said, you mentioned, I have been doing this work probably a little over 20 years. So I came into this work because I had 6 children. 5 of those children have been removed from my care because I had a substance use disorder and I was on a methadone maintenance therapy program. And so with child number 6, I went through prenatal care, and upon delivering my 6th child, and the thought had came that they would remove her from my care, and that was very scary and devastating time to think that. But I was given another chance, an opportunity to have high risk case management intervene so that she could stay in my care and also so that I can work on getting my other children back. And so that's sort of how I landed at Access Doorstep. Um, I became engaged with a program called the Westside Healthy Start Program, which was really about, ending infant mortality and low birth weight babies. And since my baby had been exposed um, to methadone during my pregnancy, it was just um, a good fit to get me involved in the early intervention programs that they provided at that time. And I became a patient advocate after that, and my experiences with them have been vast. But the awesome work that came with doing that work, the work that they did with me and helping me reunify with all of my children is more than life changing. It was impactful and it sort of changed the trajectory of my life because becoming an advocate is not something that I thought I would be doing. But life happened and it gave me a passion to the pain that I have felt from many mishaps in my healthcare journey. And I'm always one to say, turn your pain into passion, which has led to me not only being an advocate for that program, but moving on to work on the other side of the coin as a maternal and child health outreach worker and the work on the west side of Chicago with our Community Action Network, which really is very unique because Healthy Starts are about 100 across the country. And all of those Healthy Starts have to have that Community Action Network component, which comprises of about 25% of the participants in the program to be involved. So they are taking part in discussions and helping develop and implement different things that really, really impacts not just them personally in their journey, because Healthy Start covers women from pregnancy up to 18, their children up to 18 months of age. And so one of the blessings is that we have this sort of social support and this component that gets them engaged at a community level. And I think that's really important in the work we do, as well as Bridges to Bond, which is one of the things that came out of my different experiences. And Bridges to Bond really is about how do we connect people, patients, participants, community members, faith leaders. How do we all connect to the work? And I'm always hashtag the work, the work, the work. And so, whether that be in my own personal business or in my career at Access, it's all about the work. So, that's a little bit of the background about me. And of course, I got all my kids back, and I'm working from home right now, and it's a beautiful and peaceful path that I have landed in. But the work out there, especially in the Chicagoland area, continues.
Thank you, Tammy. And, turning into passion really, I think, resonates so much with so many of us who are involved in this work, no matter what our story or our journey has been. And I really do believe that, community-based organizations take pain and turn it into passion with their connections and their relationships in the community and building that trust, which is, a huge component as part of this work, especially when we're talking about partnerships with communities of color and minority communities. As we know, there's been, a historic basis of that distrust of healthcare systems and of even political systems and civil society systems. And so, your work and the work of your organization and being able to take that passion that you've gained from your own personal journey, I'm sure adds so much to that work that you do and the connections you make with the community members. And you bring up, there's obviously been so much talk, obviously even before pre-COVID, about how the maternal mortality rates in the African American community and Brown communities is really, in my view, completely unacceptable. And I wonder what your thoughts are, being in the space that you're in. What are the strategies that healthcare systems really have, and organizations, healthcare organizations in general, have to look at in order to start really addressing this issue in a meaningful way that will save lives? Because frankly speaking, too many lives have been lost, and it will take partnerships with community-based organizations and community leaders and organizers to start addressing this. So in your opinion, what do you feel needs to be done, and what have you seen possibly done that you think will begin to really address this issue?
As I mentioned before, our Healthy Start program uses a collective impact approach. So we have all stakeholders at the table: the participants, the people who provide the care, the people who manage the care, our religious leaders in the community, and we all find a way to set a common goal. But I think the most important part is that we involve the people who have to navigate the different systems of care. I have always been a big, um, proponent of making sure that the community voice is at the table, the people are at the table, and I believe that most of the time we are listening. We are listening. I think sometimes what gets lost in translation is the implementation of what we heard and some of the constraints that sometimes can um, sort of put people in these silos where they can't really get all of the work done. At our particular organization, I think we've done a great job because we have a Healthy Start, which targets high risk populations of women of color in this work, and have been doing so for over 20 years. Um, as a person who was once a patient and now as someone who works on the other side to provide the care, it's still the most important thing to gain those voices, to garner their hope, garner what they feel is necessary, and bring it to the table. And I think we've done a really great job of doing that. And also making sure that other community organizations that we are sharing with and building with, making sure that they understand the impact of having the patient voice um, at the table and sharing their concerns, so that we can look at the concerns that we might not see in our daily reports, but to address the concerns of the people. And I think through our case management, our care coordination, our male involvement, our community action network, we're doing a good job of that. I would like to see a model of care like that maybe used in different community-based models elsewhere, so that we can really start building a vibe towards getting the voice, because nobody knows how to navigate the system better than someone who's in the system. And we know that there are some pitfalls and there are some blaring um, gaps in care, and which has really been exploited since the COVID-19 pandemic hit. So
I couldn't agree more. I think, so many discussions now have been around health equity and health disparities and social determinants. Um, but I think, as you and I have discussed, and many of our colleagues, these aren't new issues. They were all there before. It's just COVID took a big spotlight and said, here you go, here it is.
Yeah.
And now we got to start talking about it. And on top of that, finally saying, hey, there is another topic that we really have to say out loud, which is the structural racism that is embedded in all systems, including healthcare. Healthcare is not immune to. And so I wonder, I'm sure you've been part of a lot of these discussions. How do we finally say, listen, like you said, this model's working, right? Your model's working, and we need to support this model. How do we start pushing leaders, system leaders, to really embrace that, and not just talk about health equity, not just have people write about it, not just convene groups to talk about it, but actually connect with community-based organizations and leaders such as yourself to say, this is how to do it, and this is whom you have to involve in order to do this work. This is the trust, this is the relationships you have to build. How do we get to that place? How do we get past the grand statements, the papers, the one-off conversations or convenings, or it's just, for me too, being in this space, I there is a sense of frustration around it, and I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
I mean, personally, I believe that one of the things that we must continue to do is have the patient advocate, patient liaison, parent liaison. I mean, we have different names for lived experience, and lived experience is probably the most important thing that we cannot dismiss at this time. I would even encourage more community folks, community residents to be a part of that process, because I think a lot of times in different communities, especially on the west side of Chicago, you have so much violence, and we just had um, a lot of rioting that left a lot of business shattered in a community that has a lot of disinvestment already. And so while our health centers are a part of those communities, we really want to encourage folks to really, really come to the table, create tables so people can talk about the stuff, um, the stuff that they feel are barriers to getting the right type of health care, barriers to creating trust. We always talk about there's mistrust, but what are we doing to build trust? And so I think personally, that's where when I'm out in the community, either for myself or for my organization, I always try to make sure that it's not about the mistrust; it's about building trust. And I think that's a key to me, because as someone who had no trust in the healthcare system, because of my experience with negative connotations that sort of came from people who I thought were supposed to care about me and my family. And I took the interactions that I had and felt like I was being demonized, judged, criminalized, because of my substance use disorder. And so those things played a big part of me mistrusting this system that's supposed to care for myself and my children. And so, to me, the biggest thing that changed my interaction with the system was the building of trust, because I know who I did not trust anymore, but in a different space, and people who are not there to judge They're there to give you what you need and help you overcome barriers, whatever that looks like. We always say meet people where they are. Well, that's a real thing. And so that was one of the things that I thought was important in my um, sort of you know, getting past the transgressions that had offended me, for the lack of a better word. And I had been offended by the healthcare system for so long, um, building trust. And you have to have the people who are in the room who got to go back to their communities to lead those lines of trust.
I think you make such an important point there. You have to have the leaders at the table who can build those trusting relationships, because I think that's a huge gap that we currently have. And I wonder, you know, I know we have organizations out there that listen into these, you know, taking time as organizations to really think about how that community outreach is done, whom you engage, and beginning to build that trust. And I think trust gets broken for so many in so many different ways, you know, as you describe with your own personal experience, whether that's from a place of implicit bias or microaggressions or just plain straight out racism. You know, we have to start tearing those down. And the only way we will do that is to really get all voices at the table to say, this is how I'm going to trust you, right? This is how we need to have a relationship with one another. I need to hear you, but you need to hear me too. And
Exactly.
then you need to commit to me and to my community. This is how we're going to work towards this goal, whatever that goal may be. Um, Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen in your work around how we can start really advocating and supporting one another to say, I need my voice at the table, right? Um, that's that's the first step. What do you feel are the ways that you know, as Tammy or as Access or as, you know, a community member can say, you know, this is how we begin this relationship? What do you think are the ways we can do that?
I'm going to speak from a community member perspective because I'm blessed to be able to work and live in the community. I was raised on the west side of Chicago, so I sort of know all the players, whether they are at the table or not. And so I'm very blessed to be able to work in the community that I grew up in. That's one part. I was given an opportunity to join an organization who really put trust, put trust in training someone from the community and bringing them aboard. And so that, like I said, one of the life trajectory things that happened to me. But just we have to start training the people who are out there. We have to continue to train community people. I like to call stuff flame, families leading and mentoring excellence. And so that's a little bit a part of what we do at Healthy Start as well, is really building up those voices, teaching people how to advocate, how to use their voice. Um, I would be remiss if I didn't think about all the times that people see things happen in their community because they're not out there enough. And when things happen, they want to use their voice and there's no pathway to use it. And so just about showing folks how to get involved. Because sometimes you just don't know. A lot of times people don't even know who's the leaders in their communities, who are their elected representatives, because a lot of the women that we work with are struggling just day to day because of social determinants of health. You know, they're worried about what they live. They're worried about how they're going to eat. They worry about, you know, getting a job, keeping a job, childcare, all the many issues and barriers that come into play. And then to be asked to be at the table on top of all those things. You know, I think I made a joke to you the first time I met you, Hala, that I was at a meeting, they were talking about $1 million budgets. And I was like, well, I don't even know how to handle this $100. I got so much to do. I mean, I had no idea. And so as I sat there like a deer in headlights, it is really about preparing people to be at the table. Um, I'm, I am very glad that we do that with our girls today, but we're preparing them to be at those tables. We're not just saying, hey, show up, use your voice, we need you. No, you have to prepare people to sit at those tables. You have to prepare them. And that's the most biggest thing. I think that's the biggest problem because we send people in unprepared to use their voice and their voice gets lost.
I mean, I again, I couldn't agree with you more. That training, that support, that education has to be an essential component of building that trust and building those relationships. And I wonder, also thinking about those sitting at the other side of the table, you know, they're not also used to building these relationships. And I think that that training component that you talk about goes both ways, right?
Yes, it does.
It goes both ways. Well, in these last, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. In these last few minutes, I did get a question through the chat that we can maybe spend the last few minutes on, if you don't mind, Tammy.
Sure.
You know, everyone is really appreciating this conversation about the power of the lived experience and using that journey and that passion to drive this work, and also about building trust. And one question we had from one of our audience members was, what additional ways can researchers and funders support and further the work you do as you in your organization and other community-based organizations? What are the ways that, you know, funders and researchers really need to look at partnering with community-based leaders and organizations and organizers, and how do we begin to support that work so we can build those relationships and trust?
I can only say that Access has their own processes when it comes to those type of relationships. On the community side, we do a lot of community-based organizations that are in our targeted communities that we serve, in particular on the west side of Chicago, but there are other organizations of like mine, other Healthy Starts in the Chicagoland area that also do the same work around maternal and child health. I think one way to really find out what an organization is doing around this important topic, because there are some, Access being one of them, but there are some great organizations that are community based who are committed and connected to the work. And I think that's the most important thing, because by giving them an opportunity to expand that work, I think you expand the opportunity to get those community residents or those who have been sort of shafted by what they feel is the healthcare system an opportunity to come to the table in a more unique and profound way.
Yeah, I think it's about creating those opportunities, supporting those opportunities, and ensuring all voices are at the table, right? And are supported and have all of the supports they need in order to do that work. And I think, you know, this will take a little bit of thinking outside the box, because traditionally, you know, researchers, this is not typically the way work or research in particular has been done. And the same with funders. I think funders have made some connections and inroads with community-based organizations. However, that flexibility that community-based organizations need to do the work and the full gamut of support isn't necessarily there. And I think it'll take, you know, our voices coming together and really saying also to funders, you know, we've got to even start looking differently at the roles we have with one another and how we can support each other better. And I think, you know, with your voice and with Access and other community-based organizations doing this important work, I hope that we can really raise this issue and really understand the need for these partnerships. And I think you've clearly showed us all the different ways that we can start to really address this issue.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I work at a federally qualified health center, so we get a ton of support. But we do work with organizations that are um, that really need the type of, like you said, inroads that we have, and we're out there just trying to share the work. And the work is just so important, and it's about building trust, not only from the inside out, but letting the people on the outside of our organizations, as we say, access the clinic without walls, but to make sure that people know that there is a opportunity to be involved so that you can have the very best health outcome, um, whatever your circumstances may be. But particular for our Black babies and our Black mothers on the west side of Chicago, this is a um, passion of mine, because, recently we just saw that a young Black woman died with her child, and she was a Facebook influencer out of London. And so just to think, I'm sitting on a task force for Illinois, but this is happening all over the country. And, we don't know if it's just trust, but we do know that something is happening to these families. Something is happening to these particular group of, to Black women in general. So it is our charge, our duty to remain at those tables and to bring those voices up with us.
Thank you, Tammy. And I think we'll end on that powerful note. Bring those voices up, everyone. Make those connections, support those connections, build that trust by committing to this work. And as we all know, this is not easy work. It's very difficult. It's emotional. It's messy. But the only way we will get to the places we want to get to for that equitable society that we all envision and committed ourselves to, we have to put in the work. Hashtag the work, and take that pain into passion and push forward. And I will end it there. Thank you so much, Tammy, for sharing your journey with us, for all the important work you do as a leader and as Access does, and all your community partners. We really, really are very appreciative of you sharing this today with our audience. I thank everyone today for joining us on Tuesday Table Talk. We look forward to having you join us next week, Tuesday Table Talk, same time, same channel, YouTube, 2 p.m. Eastern. I will post Tammy and our discussion today later on my LinkedIn page and on Twitter. So please, if you have other colleagues who did not have a chance to catch the live version, please check us out later. And Tammy, if you could just hit mute and hold on a little tight while we end the live stream. And again, thank you, everyone. Hope you can join us next week. Take care.
Yeah.